As we celebrate his joining the ranks of Les Paul Award winners, which does beg the question, how many Les Pauls do you have to destroy to win the Les Paul Award? But you know, Peter is a multi-talented guy. He's a Renaissance man. We know his skills in the studio and with that instrument, but also, of course, as an author. And he has written a wonderful book. I've read it cover to cover, and it's wonderful. I really have enjoyed it. But I couldn't help noticing, as we turn, folks, to page 197 in LA, and we stayed at a motel with rooms arranged around a pool. John Sebastian.
Whoa!
I like this part, who I had wrongly taken for a New Yorker. I don't quite get that. I'm from the village. But John showed up for a visit with his new girlfriend, Catherine. Catherine was a stunning blonde with penetrating eyes and an amazing mouth, always smiling. She seemed too young for him. Probably 18 or 19, but was otherwise a perfect flaw for the charismatic Sebastian. You know, Pete, she still got the same lips and the same eyes, and she's still too young for me. So please watch the movie out. I love you, Peter.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, dig the Who.
Pete Townshend's widely acknowledged position as the premier elder statesman of rock and roll is rooted in his 5 decades as co-founder, principal songwriter, and the innovative guitarist for rock's loudest and most provocative band, The Who.
If The Who was successful, it was against all fucking odds.
Armed with his unique creative vision and groundbreaking compositions, The Who's albums broke all the rules and made music and pop culture history. The Who were the original mod band, coming onto the scene in the wake of the Beatles. They were a true force of nature, unlike any other group playing the clubs in England at the time. Their early hits were brimming with youthful vitality. Pete's wild windmills, Roger's slinging microphone, John's sartorial elegance, and Keith's zany antics just added to the breathtaking energy. Townsend was a key figure in the development of Jim Marshall's legendary 100-watt stack.
We were demanding larger amplifiers from him, larger, because I discovered guitar feedback and I wanted that to be louder.
With Pete's immortal rock opera Tommy in 1969 and their explosive Monterey and Woodstock performances, The Who became widely considered one of the best bands in the world. Their live shows were incendiary, and not just because Pete sometimes closed performances by theatrically smashing his guitar. The classic Who's Next LP 2 years later, and what many consider to be Pete's greatest masterpiece, Quadrophenia, in 1973, established an indelible legacy for The Who.
The idea to do something in quadrophonic before was certain about the story of quadrophenia. These days on a computer you could do this kind of thing in 15 seconds. Back then it was much harder.
When Keith Moon died in September 1978, the group carried on before disbanding for the first time in 1983. In the years since, they have reformed several times, and when John Entwistle passed away in 2002, Pete and Roger soldiered on. Pete has made some superb solo albums, reminding us that he is not only an incredible guitarist, but also an exceptional multi-instrumentalist, a nuanced, emotive singer, and a brilliant composer. His 1977 collaboration with Ronnie Lane, Rough Mix, was a milestone, and his next album, Empty Glass, which included Let My Love Open the Door, easily stands among his finest recordings. Pete's acoustic performances at Amnesty International's Secret Policeman's Ball led to the Unplugged phenomenon and inspired countless musicians to become social and political activists. His own battle with hearing loss prompted him to go public, working with HEAR to confront this problem faced by so many in the music industry head-on.
You and I both have tinnitus.
It's ringing in the ear that you get when you get exposed to very loud noise, but you can get it from other things as well.
Pete has now written his candid and revealing autobiography, Who I Am, for the first time sharing the wisdom and stories of one of the most intriguing, respected, and multifaceted careers of any artist in the rock and roll era. For his enduring work with The Who, his musical innovations at too many levels to quantify, and his generosity to benefit so many worthy causes, the TEC Foundation for Excellence in Audio is proud to present this year's Les Paul Award recipient, Pete Townshend.
Before we invite Pete up on the stage, we have a couple of people who would like to add their own toasts to Pete. Please welcome the former president of the Corporate Communications Division of Dick Clark Productions, as well as the trustee of the Les Paul Foundation, Mr. Jeff Salmon, and joining him, the co-creator and producer of the benefit shows and movies for, he's a producer, a humorist, a true Renaissance man, and an old pal of our honoree, Mr. Martin Laurent Lewis.
So Martin and I are standing backstage and we have to follow that video. My name is Jeff Salmon. As a board member of the Les Paul Foundation, I'm very honored to be presenting this year's Les Paul Award to Pete Townshend. Just want to let you know that the mission of the Les Paul Foundation is to keep Les's legacy alive. And unfortunately, many people still think that Les Paul is just a guitar. So I'd really like to ask each of you to please check out the Les Paul Foundation website, like us, and spread the word about Les's legacy. We want to make sure that the rest of the world will be as inspired as you are and know what you know about Les and what tonight's award is recognizing. Thanks. On a personal note, I'm a huge fan of Pete Townshend. And one of my first concert experiences was back in 1968. I was 12 years old, only a couple of years ago. And the Doors were playing at the Singer Bowl in New York. And the band that went on before them was a band called The Who. And they just completely blew me away. I had no expectations. It was something I'd never experienced before. Pete, I'm sure you might remember that night. That was the night where the circular revolving stage all of a sudden just stopped circling. And the crowd got a little out of control. chairs began flying, the police were everywhere. That's when I realized as a 12-year-old I really loved rock and roll. There was a film made a few years ago about Lester's life, and it was called Chasing Sound. And I think that's quite an appropriate description for Pete as well, as you saw from the video that started this whole evening. Pete Townshend is truly deserving of this award, and myself and the Les Paul Foundation are very proud to be here to present it to him tonight. But before we do, I'd like to turn the stage over to Mark for a few words. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, and my dear friend John Sebastian, slightly misspoken, introduced me as Martin Laurence. I hope I won't disappoint you, I'm actually Martin Lewis. It's an easy mistake to make because Martin Laurence and I look so similar. Me so crazy. It's now 40 years, Pete, since you and I first became acquainted, but in all those 40 years of friendship, nothing has given me more pleasure and is a greater honour than to be able to be here tonight to say a few words about you. The organisers, perhaps familiar with my reputation for being over-generous when I speak, said to me, Martin, keep this short, just 4 or 5. I said, that's no problem. 4 or 5 hours, I could get it down to 2 or 3 hours, no problem at all. Pete knows that's not a joke. Pete, before I start my personal remarks, you have become a cherished friend to so many people all over the world, but especially your friends back in Britain. Your friends would do absolutely anything for you. Well, except coming to Anaheim on a rainy Friday night. But apart from that, they do anything for you. I was back in London early this week, and a couple of your old mates who I knew, I called up and I mentioned that I was going to be here with you on Friday, and they asked if they could pass a message on. The first message comes from an old pal, and it says, sorry I cannot be present at tonight's ceremony, but I would like to say that I can't think of anyone better to receive this wonderful award than Pete Townshend. Pete has been an innovative guitarist and songwriter for as long as I can remember, which is indeed a very, very long time. Congratulations, Pete, on this honour. Long may you play the Les Paul. Signed, Mick. Now, some of your pals actually shelled out for a video crew. No, that's unkind to me. He was caught in a snowstorm. He was going to shoot on video. But another of your pals wanted to send a message to you, and he put it on videotape, and please play the tape.
Hey there! Hey Pete! How you doing? Listen, congratulations on getting this fabulous award, Les Paul Award, and we all know you deserve it, because man, we go back, and I have so many great memories of you and the band, your music, seeing you on TV during my generation, seeing you live playing. To this day, you're just great. So, isn't it funny? I've never had a chance to really just stand opposite you and tell you. I'd probably be too embarrassed. But here's an ideal occasion for me to just say what I think everyone in the room is bound to be thinking, which is that you are just a great monster, man. The way you play that guitar, the way you write, it's fantastic. Always has been, hopefully always will be. So congratulations getting the Les Paul Award. How cool is that? We love Les, another great musical monster. We love Les, we love you, and congratulations.
In preparing my remarks for tonight, I was thinking about that old journalistic media cliche. It's a completely ridiculous one, but they always refer to the fact that when you were 20 years old, you wrote a song that included the lyric, "Hope I die before I get old," and they mention, oh, well, isn't that nonsense, because, you know, here you are now approaching, I think, what, your 93rd birthday, well, in 25 years' time, and, you know, and they always say, oh, well, what did that lyric mean? I think there's another lyric that's perhaps cause for some concern, because I don't think it does express you fairly well, and that was your very first, the title of your very first hit, I Can't Explain. That's nonsense, Pete. You can explain, and you do explain all the time, brilliantly and wonderfully, and you have done all your career. You've explained everything. Teen angst, alienation, identity crisis, midlife stress, relationships, struggles in the world, socio-political nexus of pop culture, auto-destruction. And that was just in the second single. But seriously, you have explained yourself and your personal feelings, and you've articulated feelings that those of us who couldn't express it in song and music could do. That's what you've done all through your working career. You've done it in your songs, in your albums, in conceptual theatre works, and stage musicals. You've explained yourself so well in your interviews every time you've spoken, and of course now in your best-selling autobiography. By the way, if you read on page 327 about the size of Mick's prowess, you will understand that very flattering note from Mick. At every turn, you have explained perfectly in great detail who you are and what you've done and why. This award is named in honour of the great Les Paul, and it recognises in you personally some of the wonderful traits that we recognise in Les Paul. Your originality as a songwriter, your creativity as a musician, your skills in the recording studio, and indeed as a producer. Everyone remember Thunderclap Newman, Something in the Air. Your work in technology, especially in advancing audio and sonic quality. When others were around, maybe really working on the 3-minute single, you were working on the mini opera and then the full-length opera. Other people were using synthesizers just to noodle to have a little bit of filigree, a little bit of musical effect. You were using an ARP synthesizer as an integral part of your composing and then your performing and recording on Who's Next album and beyond. Others had a vision of the future that was really to do with the Jetsons. Your vision of the future, in 1971 you wrote a piece where you envisioned the entire world joined up by computers. You called that the grid. Nowadays we call that the internet. But what I call your vision in 1971 was visionary and prescient. In closing, they asked me for a couple of brief personal anecdotes, and I wanted to refer to the fact we saw in that film about how you had a key developmental role in the Marshall staff. And how we had those incredible sound coming from Marshalls. I do have some recollection of this because you might remember the world premiere of Tommy was on Thursday, the 1st of May 1969 at Ronnie Scott's Jazz Club in Soho in the West End of London. In attendance were 199 British music journalists and one 16-year-old Who fan who gate crashed. Now, the music journalists were very smart. They made, as soon as they got inside, they went straight to the bar. The 16-year-old, not knowing what he was doing, went straight to the front of the stage and sat down where Mr. Townshend was going to be playing. And he had this big box in front of where he was going to be, and it said Marshall. And the 16-year-old thought, well, that must be something from America to do with Marshall Aid or something. He had no idea what it was. Sat there for the entire 90 minutes that the whole of Tommy was played, with full explanations of what each song meant in between, and it was just a brilliant experience. Of course, that 16-year-old would tell you what he actually heard that night, but his ears are still ringing. 10 years later, that 16-year-old Who fan who gate crashed was now masquerading as a producer. And he was working with John Cleese and produced The Secret Police Who's Ball, which were benefit shows and movies for Amnesty International. And this now slightly older 26-year-old called you up, Pete, and persuaded you to come along and perform acoustically at The Secret Police Who's Ball, little interstitial music in between the comedy skits from Monty Python. As we heard in the film, what you did then was incredible, because two major developments came out of it. Yes, undoubtedly you inspired Unplugged. MTV lifted the idea from what they saw you do and then turned it into a franchise, and I'm sure they haven't sent you a penny yet, but we will shame them into sending royalties. But second, and even more important than I can tell you from first-hand experience, what you did was you inspired your fellow musicians to follow your example and support Amnesty International and other social and political causes. They became activists in your wake. And I know because when I called up people such as Sting, and Eric Clapton, and Bob Geldof, and Jeff Beck, and asked them to play at the next Secret Policeman's Ball, all they did, oh, that thing that Pete did? Yes, I want to be in on that too. And that was something that you set away. And then, of course, there are others, Peter Gabriel, Bono, U2, Bruce Springsteen, and so many other artists follow in your wake. And that's what you are, Pete. You're an inspiration. And in another word, I suppose we could call you a fretball wizard. And it leads me to ask myself questions. How do you think he does it? I don't know. What makes him so good? There's only one person who can give us the answer to that, and that is because he can explain. And that is the very worthy recipient of this year's Les Paul Award. The man who I'm proud to call a friend. Please welcome Pete Townshend.
This award, I had no idea what kind of event it would be. I had no idea how far Anaheim is from civilization on a Friday night, and I'm so glad I accepted. But I accepted to say one thing. You know, when I was 17 or 18, I got a couple of tape machines at home, and in the tradition of the great Les Paul, and a couple of other people that did the same thing, I took them into my home and I started to use these machines to write music. And from that moment on, I waited and waited and waited, and in every single idea that I ever had, every hope that I ever had for a device that could do something that I wanted to do, you fabulous people made it for me. And I'm very grateful for that. You know, I've been lucky that I could afford expensive equipment and eventually studio. You could see me fiddling around at home with a fucking great sax solo. With that big 3-inch tape machine at home. But you know, out on the road now, you know, with an iPad and with a few little bits and pieces, I'm I'm capable with those things as well. I just have a roadie to carry my guitars, my keyboards, my cables, my mic stands, and all that. But I can record it all on my iPhone. But I need all that. It's such an honour to be here and be able to say this. And I know that everybody who has made equipment for me, for studio work and everything, isn't represented today. It would be wonderful to see Rupert. I've never met Rupert, but we've spoken on the phone. Not in the happiest of circumstances. It was when Focusrite hit the decks many years back, and he was struggling to make it survive. And I've still got some Focusrite bits, Rupert, if you want them. Some bits that need sticking together. But you know, I still use one of Rupert's early Neve desks at home, a little one, to go down onto Pro Tools, and I use Digital Performer my partner Rachel uses Cubase, you know, but right the way across the board are so hip to what you guys do, hip to the amount of time that you spend. And as a musician and as a composer, I sincerely want to thank you.
Freedom.